Welcome to Orthoflex Saddle Company, makers of the saddle with a suspension. The Orthoflex suspension system is the only saddling system that incorporates a lifetime guaranteed rigid tree with patented flexible panels that move with your horse. Orthoflex trees are guaranteed for life under any riding condition, heavy roping, braking, even in the event of a wreck, because they are made of solid hardwood covered with multiple layers of hand-laid fiberglass cloth and epoxy resin and formed into a complete encased unit. Traditional rawhide covered trees are a mere fraction of the strength of an Orthoflex tree. By glassing the wood bars, fork, and cantle into the fiberglass ground seat, we create a double reverse arch, historically the strongest possible construction. Our tree construction costs 3 times as much as production rawhide covered trees. Since they are guaranteed for life, they have to be able to take whatever is dished out. Don't compare our trees with others having only 1 or 2 layers of fiberglass covering with cheap polyester resin. The others are not guaranteed for anything. The following introduction by Lynn Brown, inventor of the Orthoflex saddle, will show you components and construction techniques that will help you create your own homemade saddle on the time-tested Orthoflex system, the only flexible system that works.
We are introducing a new package available to individuals and custom saddle makers, which is the Orthoflex tree with the system attached so you can build your own saddle. That's how I got in the saddle business, was I couldn't find one I was satisfied with, so I built my own. And I'll go ahead and show you in this video essentially what you'll be getting, and I'll explain some of the mechanics of the rigging, and we'll provide patterns for that. And I'll show you what each saddle looks like that we're offering to the custom builder, and we're offering 3 saddles at this time. The first one is the Quartz Roper. This is a D-Picket Quartz Roper that Quartz has been building on for the last 1.5 years. And they've had some good luck with it. We built on it a few ourselves. We've got one that another custom maker has built on here to show you. To start with, the system is attached to the tree and it operates off of little pedestals. And everybody gets excited. Oh, isn't that going to be a pressure point? We'll show you later in the video how that's not the case, and it is what's called progressively loaded. In other words, the panel has 3 layers. It's a spring material, it's an acetate, it's glass-filled acetate. It's a better spring than spring steel, number 1, so it doesn't lose its memory. It lasts. We've had as much as 30 or 40,000 miles put on this material in endurance at a trot, still ticking, so to speak. The little pedestal is actually a fulcrum point for a lever as well. So the way these stiffener layers are designed not only spread the weight out throughout the saddle area, they also simply act as levers. If I bend the end, the middle pushes down and away, as you can see here. So again, you can push the middle of this panel system right up to the tree, but if you bend the end, it pushes down and away, and it does it with force. You imagine the force that a horse can put on this, and those ends can bend, and you will not get it up. It's carrying weight in a moving fashion, your weight. It also has the ability to change angle as this is taking place. We can fit the high-withered horse in front. These are quite wide because leather skirts go on, but we have plenty of room for the horse and a not too thick pad. And so you can move with a horse, you can change angles. And as I say, it's kind of a misnomer to use the term saddle fit. Saddle can only fit a horse if he's standing still. If you start to ride him, then he moves. If he bends to the right, then the right side of his back hollows and shortens. This moves with him. The left side of his back, when he's bending to the right, it simply lengthens and straightens. This again flattens as much as need be, as straight or even straighter than a yardstick. For the mule rider, fantastic. For the person with a good straight-backed horse, quite good. The thing people don't realize is when a horse is standing, his back will be relaxed usually, unless he's really sore, and it'll be dropped. When he takes a step, it'll come up at least an inch when he starts to walk, sometimes an inch and a half. And this system then is working with the movement of the horse, not just fitting the horse, because as I say, you can only fit something when he's standing still. Now, this quartz roper has a 23 dally post horn. It's a high dally post. This is the horn before we put it in. And when we put a horn in a tree, let me explain to you how the tree is built. First, we turn out the wood, we fit the wood together on a table, leveling everything as best we can, and so on. The dimensions of the tree are very important to us. For a custom builder, he can have a tree that's a half-inch longer or a quarter-inch shorter or whatever. But here, I try to keep them exact because I clicker cut most of my patterns. The horn goes into the tree. First, this 1-inch shaft goes down into the wood. Then this 1/4 of an inch thick, 2 1/4 inch flange goes down into the wood. The wood is cut to fit this. We then insert a 5/16 inch stainless steel bolt, and we insert it through the wood, through the base of the horn, in a hole that's drilled there, and then out the other side of the wood, as you see here. Out the other side of the horn shaft into the wood. So this horn can't turn. This is not aluminum, first thing, because the first thing, custom maker will say it's aluminum horn. A roper will say, yeah, it'll break, it's brittle. This is a magnesium alloy used in marine applications. It's 110,000 tensile strength PSI, and it is as strong as a mild steel. It's lighter than aluminum, and it will bend, let's say, to 30 degrees. It may return and keep a 5-degree bend. Believe me, if you can bend this 30 degrees, you ain't going to have to worry about the horn. It's the horse you're going to pull into. So that's why we use this. It's not brittle, it's light, extremely strong. It's more expensive to cast. When it's set in, we wrap extra fiberglass around the fork. So there are usually 3 full layers of glass cloth and epoxy resin. You won't find a real heavy tree loaded with polyester resins as you will find in some of the custom-made fiberglass covered trees. They can spray on polyester resin. It's cheap. It's about 1/3 the strength of epoxy resin. It does outgas. It does get ultraviolet damage as well. So it is not as long lasting, nor as strong, nor as light as epoxy. Epoxy has to be put on by hand, and that's what's difficult. It's painted on with a brush, folks, and then you have to refinish it. You have to sand it. It takes extra work, but you come out with by far a better product. After we go ahead and see the bolt is under here, you'll see a little dark spot right there. It's encased in all of that glass. So this horn's there for the life of the saddle. Definitely it's guaranteed for the life of the buyer, and if they're broke on a horse, we replace them. And we don't replace hardly any saddle trees, I can tell you that. We've been doing this for 12 years. First thing we do after putting the wood together is we may finish like here just a little bit with a touch of Bondo, and we pre-mold on a mold that we made for the length of every style and size of tree that we make, a ground seat. That ground seat's 17-ounce fiberglass cloth. It's then molded, and we staple it onto the bare tree. Then we encase the tree, top and bottom, in the fiberglass 17-ounce cloth. It's then reinforced where it needs to be, such as right here at the horn. Usually they'll put an extra strip of a light glass right down here. This is a weak spot in most trees. And then the whole tree is encased in the glass around the horn and everything. And cured, then we go back over with a finish coat so you don't scratch and poke and cut yourself with the little edges of glass, although you still can occasionally. We put a slot in our trees for the stirrup strap attachment. We do that because it makes a much stronger tree, it makes a much narrower tree. This tree has an 8-inch gullet, right here to here. Unlike other saddle trees that you'll find, you'll notice it stays open right down through the throat of the tree. What we're trying to do with this tree is allow room for movement of these panels so that it can move with your horse or fit the unusual animal or change as he changes. So we get some fairly thin cross sections, but the glass takes care of the strength. The reason we keep it open back here is because that's where most pinching occurs on saddles. As soon as you put a pad and a good withered horse in there, you'll pinch if you're tight. This is 5.5 inches open. You've got room for pad, you've got room for horse, but not too thick a pad. Put 2 inches under this, and what happened? I'm going to have my layers of material under this panel, my sheepskin, and I'm going to have in the neighborhood of 4 inches of pad. And what'll I do right here if the horse has any withers? I'll pinch. So we'll show you the padding that we use, but I can tell you this, one plain Navajo will do. No pad at all will do better than a great big thick one. Just to let you know that, guys, when you get to building the saddles and getting them out there and using them, throw away your thick pads. They're great at pinching a horse right at the back of the gullet on any saddle. Now, the fulcrum point and the lever to bend down and away has to slide in the rear. I can't bend this down and away unless the rear slides forward. To give you an idea of what we've done, I'm going to go ahead and pop one of these loose and show you. Where did my little washer go? Here it is. Now, these washers and this stainless steel countersunk head bolt are all made to go on one way in one place and pre-fitted to 25 thousandths of an inch pre-break-in clearances, tolerances. On the front, we always have the countersunk part of the washer down, against the head of the bolt so that we do not put the sharp edge of the washer against the bolt. This lets it turn much easier, if you can see what I'm talking about. This is our ball and socket effect. This is a stainless steel washer. Next, we put this in the panel. We put the washer on top, and we will do it the same way with the stamped smooth part of the washer going up, and then that rides against this insert. This insert is slightly cone-shaped and machined. It sticks out 3/8 of an inch from the top right up to the bar of the tree. It goes up in here about 5/8 of an inch, or I guess it's 3/4, but it is a tapered and heavily threaded shaft that goes up into the tree. It does not come loose that way. In attaching this finished skirt, we'll show you how we put the skirts together the way you should do it so that it will work and move with your horse. The washer, as I explained, it goes here with the rounded surface up. The bolt and the washer go on the bottom. Imagine your skirt being finished now. You turn your tree essentially up on its side, get the bolt started right here. Now, before you finish tightening, I'll tell you that there is a stop already inside of this machined insert, and because of a few thousandths of varying thickness in this polymer, 3 layers of the polymer, and possible few thousandths of an inch difference in the length of the bolt or the thickness of the washers, we want the exact same tolerances in every point. So this insert is preset for the bolt, for this 3 layers of polymer at this point, and you must go ahead and put them where they come to you attached. The bolt and washers and polymer are all pre-clearanced. Before you tighten it all the way up, you leave 1/4 of an inch of thread right there and drop some Loctite, red Loctite, on the threads, and go ahead then and tighten the panel at that time. When you tighten it, you run it down and you tighten it as tight as you can. So you are locking against a mechanical lock. You are locking with Loctite. It ain't going to come loose. When you've got those panels covered and built into a skirt, then you've got your preset break-in for each location. Believe me, it's done individually for each location. So setting a set of skirts is no longer blocking up a wet set of skirts, sewing them, nailing them to the tree, and sewing around them on the ends. It takes just about 5 minutes to bolt them on, lock tight, run them down tight, that's it. They're already built into the skirts, and the skirts ride then independently of the tree. It does not look so funny when it's on an animal because it closes up much of the gap you see as the saddle is sitting. But again, the saddle jumped up because the middle pushed down and away. Okay, that shows you the basic system. It is a very large weight-bearing area. It absorbs a lot of shock from the rider and from the horse. The model I just picked up then is the Baron. This Baron also has an 8-inch gullet. I can barely reach it with my fingertips. The fork is a bit of an undercut, but it isn't too high. It's quite good for roping still, in other words. Very popular trail saddle. We narrow up in the seat of the Baron a little more than we do here in this Roper. So the actual seat as to how the width feels for the rider is very good. It'll feel narrower for the rider than about any standard saddle that you'll go out and buy as a Roper that they claim has a 7-inch gullet, when really they're 7 inches, narrows to 3 or 3.5 at the back of the fork, and is not wide at all. So it has a little higher cantle than the Quartz. It also, all of these cantles have just a little bit of a flap. That helps you to fit your leather on there for your Cheyenne roll. So you can nail it on, stretch it tight, and it has a little bit of a downward slant so that it then lays as it should. All this is already done in the pattern work on the tree. What we will do, and we'll show you later, is we then round or pad the seat with a 1/2 inch of neoprene foam, and feathering and skiving the edges. That's all up to you. They ride quite good the way they are. A little padding doesn't hurt the old seat bones after a long day's ride. That's the Baron model. The finished Baron is right here. This is a big one. This is with a 36 horn. This is with a 15 horn. This is a very low dally post, a very all-around horn. Compared to the 23, you can get an idea of the difference in the height of the horns. This is the only horn we do not mount with a little shaft. It is hollowed inside when it's cast so it's not too heavy, and then it is screwed down and fiberglassed over, and that is our wood post version, finished looking like this, and again, this is a saddle built on a Quartz Roper tree. And when the skirts are mounted, you'll see that you still have plenty of room in here but we've taken up some of it because we give an inch of border, at least 3/4 of an inch minimum, up to an inch around that panel on front and the upper outline of the spring panel, from here up and around, back through to here to there. Now, from there you can go ahead and use the shape you want. What we've gone to is we've gone to a cutout. And that cutout then allows closer contact, it allows quicker break-in, allows your skirts to flatten in the rear and maintain a sharp angle in front with no break-in time. So the saddle rides good immediately. I had to do that for all these top ropers who'd send their saddles in for conversion, and when they got it back, they were going to ride it for 20 seconds to see if it worked. So it had to be broke in so you could ride it for 20 seconds and have it work. That's all this pre-break-in stuff that's engineered into the saddle. Probably the most popular tree I'll see most of you custom makers using will be this slick fork. This is not quite a wade fork. It's a little higher, but not very much higher than the wade fork. Yet it's a little more like the old California style. It has a little upturn to the end of it, a little bit of slope forward, not much. And here we have a cantle without the flat spot. You could nail a Cheyenne roll onto this, but it's designed for the old straight stitched cantle binding with a little stiffener filler set above the cantle here. And that'll raise your cantle up even more. And the saddle is right behind me. Finished model looks just like this. Again, you're going to find the seat in this just a little narrower than the Baron. So we go from a relatively wide seat, but still comfortable for trail riding, in the roper here that Quartz builds on. And we go to another saddle that's very all around, a little bit narrower seat, just a little bit, but same width fork, a little higher fork than a roping fork. Very good all around ranch saddle. And we go to the slick fork. But unlike most slick forks, this saddle is still used in feedlot for roping. I have a number of feedlot people that use them because we run a 7.5-inch gullet in the front of this tree. So she's got the width again. And it still runs about 4 back here at the back of this fork, and it's pretty wide front to rear. So it's not quite as wide as the other saddles, but it still gets down around the horse quite well. And with the system, you don't have to worry about soring your horse. It also locks onto a horse's withers like vice grips. That's why another reason the ropers love this system. So the Renegade are one of our most popular saddles, and one that you can style a lot of good old-fashioned saddle making around. And great, very comfortable seats. It's very narrow through here. To give you an idea of what narrow is, it was real interesting at the Leathercrafters Convention. Everybody said, well, those trees are too wide. They looked at the widest trees and said, they're going to set way too wide across here. We went over and measured another tree maker's trees that looked much narrower, and we measured just distance here to here, right where your legs drop off. Ours ran from 1.5 inches to 1 inch narrower from here to here, because we make our own trees and they're not copied after anybody's. Even this tree sits narrower than a standard 6.5-inch width regular western tree when you measure it here to here. So it's easy to crown it with just a little bit of padding, come out with an extremely comfortable seat, yet get down around the horse and not pinch up in here, right where it all catches them. Well, you've seen the basic trees and the basic horns on these trees. I'll show you a couple of other horns here. Remember, we had the 36, we had the 23 high dally post, with the 15. It isn't going to stand up here for me because it hasn't been machined on the base. But 15 being shorter than the 23. Now, for somebody that wants the small pelican horn, we do have that. for reining, trail use, or whatever. We have another horn that I guess at one time made Bighorn Saddle Company quite well known and popular, and it's this old double-aught. And it's much wider, but it is not any higher than the little Pelican. A little lower, I guess, isn't it, than the Pelican. Excuse me, you can't see behind my hand. So it's a little lower than the Pelican. Very popular all-around trail saddle. Horn, quite strong, but not made for dallying off of. Well, next, let's go in and show you how we put the skirts together, how you'll need to put the skirts together, because we do send you the foam and rubber material that goes under the skirt itself, under the panel, in the skirt, and then you put your sheepskin on at the bottom. Thank you. Let's go to the next. Now to show you how you laminate the skirt together around the reactor panel. Here's a panel on the bottom right now. This side is what's down against the horse. This side goes up against the tree. You see the multiple layers, and you see the solid rivets going through those layers. These rivets make the layers work against each other. That's what keeps the material from fatiguing. It's what gives it more strength as a lever in certain areas, and it's what takes away the stiffness so that they will slide and bend in unison up against the wither, for instance. So the way it's designed, and believe me, the lengths, the placement of the rivets, the size of the holes, the drill bit that you drill it with cannot be a normal drill bit, because this material's so hard. If a regular drill bit goes through it, it can shatter, because it is not made to cut as aggressively as needed for this material. Annette does this job most of the day, and she's going to basically show you what she does in assembling a skirt. To start with, she's got a 3/4 inch piece of webbing that she's got against the front here, then against the top, then the upper inside. If you want the skirts in the rear a little longer for the style of your saddle, that's fine. And it's just going to be a little extra bit of soft skirt sticking out that'll carry a set of saddlebags great. If that's what you want, go ahead and do it. Most of our skirts you'll find extend beyond the tree 1 inch in the rear, 1 inch in the front. And some trees will have a mounting that's a little further back in the tree than others, so there'll be a little less extension or a little more extension of this reactor panel from the tree itself. Then your leather goes out after the reactor panel, and that can be fashion that's determined by you. Just remember that if you bring it out too far in front, it's going to curl up some, because everything here is moving. You cannot lace together the skirts in the rear, and you want to leave a bit of space there so that they can work independently of each other. This is a layer of soft steel. This is our material that we use on saddles for a replacement of leather. It's 1/8 of an inch thick. What we do with it is to recess the washer and the head of the bolt slightly. So Annette will go ahead and put this on here. It's just made 1 inch to 1.5 inches smaller than the reactor panel itself.
Round side down.
Yes. Now on the rear, something Annette's mentioning is that the round side of the washer goes down against the Delrin in the rear so that it can slide. And reason being that it does slide, and you will eat a hole down into that material over hundreds, really thousands of hours in the saddle if it is placed with the sharp edge of the washer down against the acetal. Now,
Flat side down on circle because it doesn't move.
Flat side down on the front in the circle because it doesn't move. So you have to cut your holes to where the washer moves freely and can move all the way to the front on the bolt and all the way to the rear on the bolt. By doing that and sliding freely in between, then we have a system that's dynamic, it's moving. If this washer catches against this material here, this little spacer layer, the system in the rear won't move, not easily. So it has to be centered, it has to move. Now I think she takes her pattern here for the holes, turns around, she's going to mark her skirts, don't you, with the hole right there to start it, and with a hole right here. Then she cuts the slot. But whether you do this one first or this one first, you then put them together and see that they will match up. And you have to have movement on the front. We have a pedestal on the front, so we go ahead and, on the top I should say, we have a washer riding on the top in this slot too, and right here in the skirt. So that's how it goes together. These go on. Now she's marked and cut a piece of the urethane type material we use below the system here and right under your sheepskin against the horse. This again is a recessing layer. When we pull the bolt down and the washer down, we have almost no bump, but a tiny bit of a raised area on the head of the bolt itself. So right now, you'll notice she's also punched two small holes in here. That's all you're going to have to tighten these bolts with your Phillips screwdriver. So you turn it that way, and then the whole thing, all it needs now is the sheepskin. You can go ahead and glue these layers together, one layer at a time, until the whole thing is a unit right up onto the sheepskin, which she's marked out here. And once you have them all glued together, what we use around here is just a bigger tool. And essentially, you're going to set the layers of contact cement like this. With a big rubber mallet, works quite well. You can use what you want. You can run it, because of the bolts, you can't run it through a wringer, but it'll go ahead and set the glue good and tight. The glue will hold well against the acetal. Has nothing pulling it away. It's only pushing everything up to the acetal layer of the spring panel inside there. So this becomes your composite, and once it's glued, you just cut it out, finish the edges, and you have a finished skirt, which is ready to then simply bolt on to the tree. And again, be sure every bolt, washer, and so on goes right back in the same place on that tree. So put them in the skirts. If it comes out of the left front, in this case, of the tree, you put it in the left front of the skirt, the left rear, and right front. That way everything has proper tolerances, and you don't have something that binds up too tight. To let you know what can happen and how strong this polymer is, it is strong enough that if you turn this just half a turn tighter, or a turn tighter possibly, but not a turn, it'd be way tight by that time. But at any rate, if it gets too tight, it will bust the head right off this 5/16 stainless steel bolt. I've had it happen a number of times just for trail riding, because that is how much force takes place when this system is absorbing between you and that horse. That's what's wearing the fleece off. The shoulders are wearing the fleece off of your skirt from clear down from the scapula up through the saddle pad and hitting the fleece with such pressure because it's right against the tree on a regular saddle. It's running into that tree with a pressure, it wears the fleece off on every saddle that's ridden very much. Never has Orthoflex even had a layer of the synthetic fleece worn off a saddle since we've been in business since 1985. So it's that this is moving. Your shoulders don't hit the solid tree. We'll show you how to rig it to make it operate in that manner so it moves with those shoulders in the next segment. But I think you can see that putting skirts together and putting them on this tree, the ground seat is already pre-shaped. It's one of the few trees built anywhere that has a ground seat that's actually cut, shaped into the bar. Regular saddle trees just have an oval thickness, rather straight bar, and you've got to build up with strainers and layer of leather under the strainer and a slot right here to weaken the tree, and stirrup straps always hang right off the front of the tree or back just a half an inch, where with the slots you can set where you want. We typically set back 1.5 inches from the base of the fork, particularly on a roping saddle and most trail saddles. You can move this slot around some and put a stirrup strap back further under a rider, or put it further forward for like cutting and the old centered riding Monty Foreman type of stirrup strap arrangement, running it clear up against the front, or V-ing a stirrup arrangement is easy with this, like the Foreman saddle had. And that gives you a lot of versatility. We'll show you a little bit about stirrup straps and what we do. Quartz goes through this with leather. He likes a stiffer strap on a roping saddle, so do ropers. But if you want a stirrup strap to swing that won't wear out, we'll show you how you can hook it up. I don't have to show you, really. I can tell you. Go through here with some Biothane. Biothane is very popular now in stirrup straps. Add your leather strip to the tail on the bottom. Works great. Other nylon webbing and Biothane together works also. And you can see now that you can concentrate on the artwork of covering the fork, covering the horn, laying in a base seat, and or just simply padding on the tree, and then styling and designing the rest of your saddle around this tree, which is already cut out about 40% of the work of building a saddle, between the tree being pre-shaped in the seat area and the skirts blocking up as quickly as they do. They don't block up, they just bolt on. So you can do what you want in the way of artwork. Next, we will send you a paper pattern of the fork pattern we use to cover each fork width that you should order, whether it's the Roper, the Baron, the Renegade. We'll send you a pattern of that fork cover. We'll cut out a pattern of the tails, the filler, the belly with the tails, the filler layer, and the top layer of the horn. We'll send you those pieces already patterned for the horn that you get on your tree, and that will save you a ton of work. You've got to put them together, sew them together, and trim them off some to finish them the way you want. You can hand stitch your horn. It'll save you a lot of work, because I do have the patterns done for the horns. You're going to get those too. Next, we'll look at the yoke, and you will get a pattern that is marked and positioned on your tree so that the dropped yoke rigging sets at the right angle so it can function as it's engineered to place this panel right up over the shoulder of the horse, depending on the size of the horse, and it will then operate with him as he moves. So all of this is great if you put it on the horse where it's designed to work. I'll explain that to you next segment. Now to go ahead and explain how the drop yoke rigging is designed, I figured I would get my horse Silver. He's a handy horse because I've trained him not to buck, but he does almost everything else. And it was made off of a mold of old Big Red. If you've ever seen the instruction video, I made a mold of his back, reproduced it in fiberglass, and it has some internal workings. It's just about like a horse as well. So when you turn Silver on, he's my galloper. Shoulders are flexing outward right here 1.5 inches. Loin flexes up 1 inch. And when Big Red got this mold made, you know, he's a pretty easy-going horse. His back was relaxed, so it's got a little more curve in it. than our saddle trees do. And our trees made to work with this system are thinned out underneath and they're fairly flat. Reason being that we want the system to be able to flatten out when the horse does. If we have too much curvature in a tree, which I used to put in the bars of the Orthoflex before this Orthoflex 2 system that just literally is like a floating unit under the tree that's attached to it. Before it, that curvature was always there. Put it on a mule, you had to wedge up with shims the ends of the system itself to make it stay in place on that mule. You don't with this newer system. Now when I put the saddle on a given horse, I want the rigging to go right down into the heart girth area. That's why the neoprene girth was designed in the first place. We were sending out saddles through the mail and it was almost impossible to get a rigging to place the saddle on the horse where we wanted it, until I found out one thing. And you'll notice right here I'm just going through this little bent D-ring twice. It's attached once, I go through it and back to it again. But if you go within this far of the horse's elbow with our girth, you'll have no problem. Whether it's the regular neo girth or the soft sides girth, which is very thin at the elbow and very wide at the sternum and even better. But you will have attached that saddle. When cinching with this dropped yoke, you don't want to sit here and do this. When cinching with any saddle, you don't want to sit here and do this, because what you end up doing when you're doing this is pinching like hell on that horse, and they hate being cinched. Number one thing when cinching a horse is, and I wished I had a live one here, but we'll show you some other time. Step back a little bit, lean up against him like this. Now you show me a horse that'll step away. They'll lean against you. Once they've leaned against you and you're pushing against them with the left hand, bend over, get a hold of that latigo, pull out and tighten. Now D. Pickett, in the video he did in showing how to use our pad, did not really tighten the girth. And I showed him how to tighten in this manner. Believe me, he does. Then you can set the little tongue of the buckle and you're ready to go. This one it won't set, so I'm going to leave it like it is there. I have no give in my quote girth area here to set the tongue of the buckle. What we've done with a dropped yoke is I have a mounting here, and this is the panel system. It's sitting here to operate with the shoulder. We have about 5 inches of flex, 6 inches when your skirt is finished, of flex area to that pivot point fulcrum mounting. And it sits right here. We want a relationship from right here when the saddle is balanced in the seat to go right through the middle of this D-ring. We will mark the yoke position. We'll send you a paper pattern on your tree and a basic outline of the shape of the yoke. The reason for it, there is a kick out right here. This kick out is tighter than this back here. See, so I'm not really tight in the rear. I'm stabilizing. I can only come up so far in the rear. I have designed a kick out so that we pull tighter on the front than the rear. That means your saddle never moves when you cinch up. You place a rigging back here and you run it with a straight strap to here and a straight strap to here, and you tighten it up and it'll pull the saddle forward most of the time. Any of the riggings placed as you see them in skirt will always pull saddles as far forward as they'll go, up and over the shoulder. And what happens with the system is we want to be up and over the shoulder with the system. Now we're flexed out here full 1.5 inches, but we still have a little room for flex in the system. What we do on a small horse up to 16 hands, typically we will ride up over the shoulder with the skirt, and that's good. And with the smaller horse, the smaller they get, the further the shoulder will be sitting under this system. As the horse gets larger, the shoulder will be moving forward in this system because the dropped yoke is working off of elbow placement. And you will find that in every horse there's 1 to 3 inches of offset between the scapula while the horse is standing and the elbow. The scapula will be back of the elbow 1 to 3 inches. Took a long time to accidentally figure all this stuff out. But that let me make a rigging that Murphy proofs where the saddle will go on the horse if I can get the horseman to do one thing. Stick that girth right up in the heart girth area, very close or right against the elbow practically. Cinch up there in the fixed ribs in the smallest diameter spot of the heart girth. And your saddle will usually be positioned correctly. If you have to move a saddle back, then you kick the yoke down here at the bottom forward 1 inch. You just go boom this way. You can trim it off here, pull it up, and let it angle change a little bit here, and you'll be surprised how your saddle will then stay back. If you've got to go forward with the saddle, you bring the yoke back this way. All you have to do is straighten out this curve, come back 1 inch. You'll pull the saddle forward 1.5 inches or 2 inches. Then it's always pulling forward some for a horse with a big shoulders that continually pushes the saddle back. That's a fixed. Now, you can understand some of how this is designed. Guarantee you shorten it up 1.5 inches and you're going to catch this little bit of bulge here of just 1 lap over with stirrup strap. So we've played with it, folks, for many years. You shorten it, going to give you problems. All the boys you see copying our drop yoke rigging have never gotten it down to here. The D-ring is made tight enough you can't tie a cinch knot in it because you can't tighten it up enough if you tie a cinch knot in it. And we want to over cinch on the ground because when you get in it will loosen some. And the system is amazing in what it does. Christy, come over here and I'm going to get a volunteer to put her hands up under here. Stick your hands right on up under there. Can you get them up under a little further than that? Let me loosen the cinch here. I've got you so tight. Okay, now get your hands under there. Yeah. Something that would just tear your hands up normally. And all I've got to do is get on without pulling the saddle over. And that's not too hard. We can pull it over a little bit and slide it right back. But I want to get my weight in the stirrups here. And I want to get them up there on your hands. Pull it up a little further. Does that feel good?
Feels good.
Now we're going to turn the galloper on here. Let Silver do his job. Turn him up a little. Okay. Now, do you feel any excessive pressure on your hands?
No,
You sure?
pretty sure.
Do we have to ride for 10 minutes to show them, or you think they'll believe you? Look at the camera. They got to see your face. She's not grimacing, folks. It's the truth. I use this at shows. Until you feel it, you can't believe it. Okay, you can take your hands out now. Go ahead. All right. Come around here, Christy. Now this bit of a drop we have in this horse's back, you can stick your hands up in here. Now you feel this tree moving up and down a little bit, pinching, go ahead. See your hands going under the saddle tree right now. It's pushing down and away from that tree. Put your hands up under the panel now. Can you get it under there? Huh? A little force, huh? Okay, but you got your hands stuck up under it now. It is that she's put a bulge in the middle of that horse's back right there. It just accepted that shape and it'll ride without hurting her. But it took quite a little bit to pry it up off that horse because the forces in the front bending the ends maintain that contact in the middle. Okay, Christy, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Silver. He always does such a good job. Thank you, folks. I hope this is enough to let you know how the system works, how easy it is to build an Orthoflex saddle with the work we've already done in designing a system that's made to work with a horse. This is a 1/2 inch of neoprene foam that's put on, skived down. The saddle's ready to build on. You can do it. It's not very hard. I enjoyed it, and we gladly support anybody that wants to build their own saddle, because like I say, that's how I got started. I can't keep from tinkering. But you will have these available from Orthoflex dealers. The price is $600. It includes the tree, it includes the panels, it includes the bit of pattern work I showed you, it includes the layer of gray urethane and a small strip of the soft steel to use as layers up underneath your shearling sheepskin on the bottom of the skirt, because that'll be hard for you to buy. It will also include this D-ring and a little spacer unit that we have in here that's leather that we can clicker out for you. Saves you a lot of time and trouble. This is the greatest rigging, eliminating all bulk. And when you anchor clear down here and you're pulling from down low like that, it holds the saddle so much tighter than what you can with the D-rings up here. Gets them out from under your legs. And anytime you have a bump, that's why I don't want people to tie a cinch knot. Anytime you have a bump there and you rub a stirrup strap back and forth across it, you will put fluid under the skin and have a roaning of white hair next spring or late in the fall when winter coat grows in. So we have designed this, number one, for the horse, but number two, you can see it is great for the rider. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoy building your own Orthoflex. It's $600 from your dealer, and they'll give you plenty of support, I'm sure.